some definitions, but again, it's just Googling and you'll be able to get the meaning of the definitions. Next slide, next. Great, so I am here to present on women in healthcare leadership. And to start with, I would like to say that in terms of programming a few years ago, I designed a program that was looking at the challenges that inhibit men and women in terms of education and advancement in regards to education. And we did a case study in one of the pastoralist regions and realized that because of social cultural practices and norms, issues to do with agency, voice, and the structures, a majority of girls were not able to complete their primary or secondary level education. And we went and started asking ourselves, what would be this factor that has contributed to this? And we realized that because of social cultural factors, a majority of them got pregnant early and they were not able to progress to their advancement. And therefore, when we are looking at this study, we are also looking at some of the inhibitors that have contributed to the lag in terms of women advancement in healthcare leadership. And so the big question to this research was, are the ranks on the organizational career ladder broken, or is there no ladder at all? And this project had partners. It was funded by Bill and Melinda Gates Foundation. The grantee was the Strathmore University, and the sub-grantee was Kenya Healthcare Federation. This project is implemented in 3 countries. We do have Kenya, Nigeria, and India. We had a team that I will not mention one by one that contributed to this study because it was a country level study. And the purpose of this study was to examine how organizational elements, that is structure, leadership, culture, and policies constrain or promote women's career advancement in Kenyan health sector organizations. We had quite a number of objectives in this research, and the first was to look on the equitable advancement of men and women. Again, one of the things that I would like to emphasize here is gender is a social cultural construct, and it affects both men and women. And we cannot go to the space and talk about the issues that are affecting women or the issues that are affecting men without having this conversation of both. And we were looking at how it has been from the lower to mid to senior, and what are some of the inhibitors that have led to this. The second objective looked at organizational structure and policies and how they affect the promotion of women's career advancement. The organizational culture, and as we know, we have grown from communities where we have patriarchy and cultural sensitivities. I have heard in the previous conversations a majority of men saying that I was able to do this because of the family. And we do have the levels of socialization. We start with the family, which is quite key. How you are trained in that family would determine how you are going to behave even at the workplace. We have the faith-based institutions that have been able to shape us on who we are and how we present ourselves. There is also the component of the community. The community you have grown from would also make a positive or negative impact on how you portray in regards to different setups. And also the school you attended. It also contributes to how you present. And then it was very critical for us to look at the organizational culture and whether it promotes the same. The role of leadership was also very key. And when we look at role, we are looking at three components in terms of roles: the reproductive, the productive, and the community role. And where do we get men contributing more, and where do we see women contributing? And we realize that a majority of men contribute at the reproductive stage, but when it comes to the community role, that is a role that has been left to women. And it is good for us to ask ourselves, how can we contribute? Because yes, there is the part of conception where you get a child, but after that child comes in, how do I come in as a father to support the whole process to delivery, postnatal, and also being in the life of this child? The peer support networks and male allies, that is an area we were also looking at, and also the effectiveness of the existing interventions. Next slide, please. The domestication and operationalization of legal frameworks. We do have Resolution 1325. We have CEDAW, and also the Beijing Platform. And in our country, we do have the National Gender and Equality Commission that has come up with policies that we could also customize within our institution. And therefore, it is good for us to see on how this has been domesticated. The first stage was to conduct a thorough literature review that showed that in terms of leadership composition, women make up 70% of health workforce, but hold just 27% of leadership roles. And this is just an example in terms of the healthcare sector, but even in other sectors, including agriculture, where we do have also food security, the banking sector, this is also something that has cut across. There were also strong gaps in terms of increasing female health leaders, in terms of how they would improve outcomes and equality. And therefore, this posed a number of gender biases that contributed to this study that sought to address gender inequalities in health sector leadership by proposing effective, sustainable interventions. And thus, this contributed to the focus of this study. The study population, and as you can see, we ensured that we had public, private sector health delivery organizations, the manufacturing, the supply chain and logistics, NGOs, CBOs, faith-based institutions, amongst others, in regards to how we would be able to sample. We used stratified random sampling that looked at 10,443 individuals, and now a sample that brought us down to 403 institutions, that is organizations. And we conducted 3015 surveys and 38 key informants, plus 3 focus group discussions. In terms of the demographic characteristics, as you can see in the next slide, we had the public, the private, and the non-governmental organizations. And we realized that as you transition from the public sector to the NGO sector, the proportion of female increases while the one for male decreases. The study design looked at quantitative and qualitative methodologies, where we used this convergently as a mixed methods design, where data was collected and analyzed, that is both quantitative and qualitative. Validation of the quantitative and qualitative happened, and this was triangulated at that point, still having in reference the component of literature review, and this was interpreted for us to get the findings of the study. The theory of change that we used for this study looked at the systems model of organizational change, and it identifies 4 key elements of change, which is strategy, structure, people and culture, and also people in terms of effectiveness and transformation. And now, in terms of a deep dive when it comes to the quantitative findings, and when we looked at the demographic characteristics, more women than men participated in the study, and many employees were aged between 20 and 39 years, suggesting a relative youthful workforce, and the majority were married. A noticeable proportion held college diplomas, followed by undergraduate degrees, highlighting a well-educated workforce. When it came to organizational policies, a general consensus there was to ensure equitable pay for similar roles across sectors. That is, in all institutions, we were able to see a consensus when it comes to pay. Addressing differences in performance and based promotions and transparency, that was seen to come out clearly. And there was a component in terms of addressing greater support needs for women seeking flexible work schedules. Again, when we talk about reproductive roles, we do have the component of maternity and other areas that most organizations had looked into. However, a few had taken that into consideration. Organizational culture. The men and women receive equal treatment at the workplace, but the private sector showed a stronger boys' club perception with less support for women. And then women are more involved in housekeeping and feel their opinions are less valued. When we talk about housekeeping is when we all go for a meeting, the women in that meeting will decide they are the ones who are going to serve tea. And at that time, a majority of the men would not stop the meeting. They would continue with the discussion, and most women would walk out without understanding the deliberations that were made. And that's just an example of housekeeping roles that have transitioned from where we live to also the workplace. In terms of organizational leadership, leadership is accessible to all genders. That was clear. Some women felt excluded from opportunities due to gender, and more women missed advanced training but reported recent promotions. Career advancement opportunities, we saw most employees reporting not receiving training focused on soft skills development. And I remember the conversation this morning that majored a lot on the soft skills. And in the focus group discussions, it was clear that we need to see on how we can customize soft skills, especially for men. Because one area is how they can also show sympathy and empathy, and that would require training. Because when you grow through a culture or a patriarchal society, you will live with what you have seen, and therefore there is need for trainings when it comes to soft skills development. There was a substantial percentage of employees that had engaged in leadership management development programs. Gender in the workplace, there was significant difference that were discovered in terms of salary raise, key assignments, chance to advance their career, and there was also a little bit in terms of the increasing towards gender equity. And in terms of gender equity in the workplace, both men and women should be held accountable for progress towards gender equity. It's not a matter of holding men accountable only or women accountable only, but it's for us to look on how both men and women should be held accountable. Gender is not a woman's issue, and this is something that came across, that a majority of men in the discussions said that gender was introduced to women, and that is why they felt that they have been excluded in the whole process. But again, the way I defined gender, gender is a social cultural construct, and we need to involve both men, women, and also bring our boys and girls on the same. On the critical change levers for gender equity, a general consensus to ensure equitable pay for similar roles was seen across sectors. And there is also a need to address differences in performance-based promotions and transparency, which is something that didn't come out a little bit clearly, and also address greater support needs for women seeking flexible work schedules. In regards to the qualitative findings, which I'll be able to summarize because of time. I would read a few quotes, like for instance, the first one: support we give them depends on their performance at work and their education. So, no really based on gender. Again, in terms of moving up the organizational structure, it was typically performance driven. So, you have to perform for you to be able to go up in terms of organizational structures. Organizational policies and practices, I'll read the second quote. I think we are over 90% when it comes to gender equity. We usually recognize gender in every aspect of every project. Yes, it is being recognized, but the question is about implementation. Are the policies being implemented to the latter? Organizational culture. I think there is an automatic priority given to men in complex assignments, regional assignments, stretch assignments. There is an assumption that women can't travel, or you can't really arrange your side of things to leave your children. They'll quickly say that X has a child, but the child doesn't stop your ambitions. Again, the reproductive component coming in, that where education is required in terms of women advancement, as well as when it comes to roles that would lead them to leaving the reproductive roles. Organizational leadership. I think for us senior management team, we have got a lot of support from our board. I think we have very good board, especially the board chairman is so pro-women. My own leadership journey has been thanks to his mentorship, his trust and confidence in us leaders. I think it has been one of the most empowering successes. Mentorship came out quite strongly from the qualitative discussions, that a majority of women are pointing out that where they have worked with mentors, they've been able to strive. And I think that is one of the discussions that we are going to also discuss in a short while. Also, women were able to work with other women as mentors, and they also saw the transformational change. Gender equity in the workplace, because remember, if in a ward you have 10 women in a department and you only have 2 men, you'll not survive, because there is a stage that a woman cannot do night duty. So again, there are components and issues that was plotting out that will be able to triangulate. And then the critical change levers: create work environments where vulnerabilities related to womanhood are not treated as weaknesses and strengths are not regarded as threats. And therefore, in terms of recommendations, it's critical for us to see on how we can establish women's leadership academies. And this would help in terms of offering trainings, mentorship, and also networking to empower them to leadership roles, because we are looking at that gap at the leadership. Implement gender quotas for leadership positions, where it will help to break down barriers and accelerate progress towards gender parity. Promotion of male allies and advocates. This came out quite critically, and I am sure we are going to discuss this further, and during our cocktail also engage further in asking ourselves, how should this allyship look like, and what do we need to advocate for? Incorporation of gender-sensitive leadership trainings, again, because of culture, the social cultural issues, we need to see incorporation of gender-sensitive leadership trainings. And establish women leadership networks, that also came out, and also implement flexible work policies. In terms of conclusion for this study, the future of women in health leadership in Kenya depends on intentional efforts, systemic changes, and creating a gender-inclusive environment. And therefore, it is key for us to address challenges through policy reforms, education, and cultural shifts. The healthcare sector can unlock its full potential and improve health outcomes for all. Thank you so much, and it is good for us to understand that in all the sectors that we are in, promotion of gender equality is key, because we want to see equity and equality. Thank you very much, and thank you for listening. The next session would be for us, and I know you've noted some questions, we'll be able to ask them. And we are going to have a panel discussion that is looking on fostering gender equity and promoting gender equality. And for a start, so that I can be able to take a breather, I would request my panelists to start by introducing themselves and what they are doing in terms of improving gender inclusivity as well as also gender equality. And I'll start from my immediate right, Paul Kuria, who comes from the National Gender and Equality Commission.
Thank you so much, Dr. Mutuku, and happy International Men's Week. It's no longer a day, it's a whole week of celebrations. And he has given my name. I'm a husband, I'm a father of three. That is the three children that are known in the public. Anything can happen to men. And Kuria Paul is my name. I work as a technical officer at the National Gender Equality Commission. The commission was established way back in 2011, post the promulgation of the new constitution. And our core mandate is to promote gender equality and freedom from discrimination. But from the common sense and belief that we only deal with women, we have 6 special interest groups that are called vulnerable populations. The definitions are found in the international protocols and obligations. That includes children are completely vulnerable. We have young persons, anyone who has attained the age of 18 and has not attained the age of 35. We have older members of society, and I've seen a few of you, you're my clients. And all of you are heading to be older persons in the society when you attain the age of 16 as defined in our constitution, Article 216. We also have minority and the marginalized communities and indigenous populations as well. They could be small in populations or they could be endangered group of populations. And we also have persons with disabilities as well as our clients. The fact is that, as Dr. Ali has mentioned in here, we are a very heterogeneous society, and we need to be cognizant of the most left behind. And even for those who are left behind, we focus on the farthest of all. Thank you so much.
Thank you, Paul. A hand of applause, please, because it is one thing to stand in front and say something, and the other thing to listen. Please, let's again put a hand of applause to him. Secondly, Dr. Nora Obudo, who is the Managing Director, East Africa, in terms of being the Director of Women Lift Health. Over to you.
Since from clinical to programmatic work, and right now I'm in the women's supportive in the sense that you need women, number one. Women bring a lot of depth and detail orientation as well as follow-up. Men will bring the big picture, strategy. So you need a blend of both in order to succeed. So we've embarked on affirmative action where when a position is declared, you deliberately skew it towards a particular gender so that you can balance the both. The other thing we have done is to give a voice to both genders equally, pay attention to what contributions everybody is making, particularly genders that are seen to be a minority in the workplace. And I'm talking about both men and women here. So it's very important to pay attention to the voices, get opinions, listen, take note, and give feedback so that you get that equal contribution from both genders. Thank you very much.
Thank you. Thank you, Dr. Sam Ogola, for that response. And Dr. Nora, we have seen village savings and loans associations thriving a lot at the community level, and women working together in regards to networks. But then as we go up the ladder, they go shrinking and other forms of networks. That was just an example. So how can organizations facilitate the establishment of formalized networks and support groups for women in healthcare leadership roles?
Thank you. I think that's a really good question because you always find that women have no space to network because they're probably, whether they have partners or they're single, they'll be running from work most of the time to tend to the family. And you'll see men have the opportunity to probably meet at a bar, that is where you're socializing, go for golf, or even having a meeting at midnight if you're in politics, or at 1 a.m. It's very possible. That is not possible for women, and sometimes you find that this is where the decisions are being made. And part of our discovery analysis that we conducted for women in East Africa, it was the idea that they do not have platforms to engage and to network, and this is some of the areas that they miss out in terms of advocating for themselves, positioning themselves for positions, supporting each other, or even just calling on a business call and closing the same. And so in that regard, really women's networks are very important. And we can create this within the workplace. And this can be in terms of mentorship groups. They can be in coaching support groups, or even the one-on-ones that we, like in terms of coaching one-on-one that they would need in essence. We can also structure our meetings that will meet the time that women actually have to engage in the workplace. And we've been looking at all these spaces where you can have women have, whether it's a brown bag lunch meeting, or if you go to a conference, have a session for the women to engage, meet, and interact. Because sometimes truly at night it becomes very tricky. There's a whole safety issue that women have to think around. But how can we provide that? I can tell to an experience I did have working in Nakuru Provincial Hospital at the time. And if you have to take, I had to work in casualty, but there was no transport. There was no accommodation within the hospital, and there's no transport for you. So you need to come in at 7 in the morning, and you need to leave at 5 in the morning. And these are some of the things that we can look at institutions. How do you support women to engage in the night duty? How do you support women to engage in even high travel spaces of work so that they're not So mentorship circles, as we have seen, it has been something that has worked in our programs. We have an alumni network and platform for the women. Once they graduate from our program, they join an alumni, and we create social networks that they say we want to have a coffee meeting, and all the women in Kenya will come together and they will meet and they'll discuss the health challenges and support each other, look at resources and how they can move it around. We also get together during conferences and they look for each other and we are able to support perhaps a dinner or a lunch and they can engage. Now these are the areas that we need to meet women at. Designed within programs, designed within organizations, and in any deliberation that we have externally outside of the workplace. But it must be formalized. If it's not formalized, then it's not sustainable. So if we don't have mentorship structured within the organization to support them, if we don't have roundtables or women programs, because we're seeing some of the programs for organizations that we're working with, like IAVI, they have a technical working group just focusing on women, and they have space to engage. They're given funding to support their engagements, and so that's sustainable through and through in the organization. So that is how we can look at institutionalizing the process for women's networks and engagement for them to really thrive in the workplace.
Dr. Nora, do you think the Boys Club could be a leeway in terms of learning how it has worked before we form the girls' networks, or do you think we already have the space to start off and form the girls' network?
No, we have the space to form the girls' network. We could learn from the Boys Club, but we can also look at how the Boys Club operates, really, and that is what I'm describing in terms of where they're able to meet. You can meet over a drink at 6 p.m. at a bar. So look at the same thing for women to meet at a bar at 7 o'clock. And depending on the situation they are in, whether they're married or with partners or whatever situation, but it always puts the woman on the disadvantage. So they cannot engage in that space. So how can we create spaces that are friendly for women where they feel safe? Because it's an issue of also having a safe space. And in also taking into consideration the other caregiving responsibilities that women have to still take care of. And that is why I'm saying let's meet the women where they are. If they're at a conference, let's have a session for them. If it's lunch that is safe and if people are comfortable, let's meet them at that space. If it is church, let's have something at church where they can meet, engage, and support each other, because then those are safe spaces for them. And so I'm saying, like, let's meet women where they are. Instead of trying to bring them out for a meeting at 2 a.m. for a political decision to be made on health insurance, it won't work. And so we will tend to miss out on their contribution, lived experience, technical soundness in terms of health and what they want to bring on board if you have a meeting at 2 a.m.
Thank you so much. I hear the word safety in terms of also looking at the time and activity profile and more of flexibility. Dr. Paul Kuria, in terms of the creating gender-inclusive organizational cultures, what are some successful examples of organizations fostering gender-inclusive cultures, and how can their experiences inform efforts within the Kenyan healthcare sector? And as he responds, please put down your question. I am going to take 4 questions from the floor, and kindly direct your question to any of the panelists, and we'll be able to get the response. Paul, your space.
Thank you so much. Allow me to take a second and step back and say the following. There is compelling notion that gender equality issues are trivial, they're very easy to deal with, and it's just a button that you switch on and off. It's a very complex space, and the gender equality agenda is so multidimensional that you require predictable investments, you require strategic disruptive interventions, and you need very bold strategies and postures to ensure that we drive it towards the direction you want. Ordinarily, in a single decade, you'd make a lot of gain and then lose it all in a second. Very easily to do that. Let me come to your question. The National Gender Equality Commission has assessed some of the institutions. There are other institutions that we have just looked at the great literature and the publications, and there are those that we have worked with, and therefore I'm going to give you illustration, a couple of examples of institutions that falls in either of those buckets. But the first one is where we have audited, and without any doubt, we are very confident that judiciary is one of the institutions that many other institutions can learn from. First of all, with understanding that every institution that is represented here, you have something to offer. That's for a fact. Everything that you're doing could be positively and cumulatively addressing the question that you have raised. But the judiciary, starting with just, and remember the gender equality is a continuum of issues. You start from the classical rhetoric possession to very subsistence issues, and then substantive issues, and ultimately transform. And transform, Doc, means from one form to another form. It can't be from a circle to a circle. That's not a transformation. It must be either from a triangle to something different. And that's not easy to attain. No wonder we need so many years to close these gender issues. So judicially, starting from the very classical rhetoric possession, is just by their numbers, because the affirmative action principle says that the principle is, remember there's a difference between a principle and a rule. The principle is be on the table. Let's count you. There are 1, 2, 3. So she's the only one on that table. That means underrepresented. Judiciary has averted that. And we can see either in the courts, the high courts, you look at the Court of Appeal, you look at the Supreme Court, you look at JSC, that has been addressed. Now, when you move to the subsistence issues, you look at the institutional framework, for instance, they have a very robust, comprehensive, and agile International Women Judges Association, Kenyan chapter, that is driving is a mechanism for driving the gender equality and for driving the women representation within the spaces that they find their gaps in. You also have the Judiciary Academy, which is very proactive and progressive. You also have the Judicial Service Commission as well. But most importantly, in all this, is to look at the jurisprudence. Look at the decisions that are made in court, and that favors, they are very positive towards promotion of women empowerment and women economic empowerment, while the latter is a subset of the larger. Now, that's one good example to give, and there are many reasons why you can look at it judicially in the perspective and the prism of a very disruptive, progressive institution on the gender agenda. In the private sector, not because East African breweries are in here, of course it's a Friday, and beer, would go well with Friday, but East African breweries, I have sat in many spaces. I have read about the work of the East African breweries. And interestingly, it's not about the brewers in Kenya. There is also the brewers in Papua New Guinea, in one of the islands. And there's something interesting about the beer industry. I don't know the reasons why. They may be telling us. But I can give a short narration, and I saw one of my colleagues who we worked with many years back. Something negative could always be associated with alcohol taking, unfortunately. I worked for the Population Services International. Alan is here. And we ran a program known as Kunywa Zaidi, Tereza Zaidi. Maybe you weren't born then. But that was associated with EBL, even when it never came from them. And the EBL has many traces of attributes and efforts that are pushing the gender agenda and closing the gender equality. And there are good lessons to learn from them. One of them that I like is the whole domestic and family abuse guide with counseling services that are offered to the workers. And most importantly, that you can have and you can take days off to, I think, to up to 10 days to be able to go and solve domestic issues or conflict issues that you may be having at home. That's commendable. They also have huge, large-scale empowerment program, and I've seen that with Strathmore. I think that is one of the institutions they collaborate with in training the women on leadership issues and women-led entrepreneurs and expanding that. And also, most importantly, is connecting to the farthest left behind, who are the rural populations, those who are in fragile economies or fragile spaces, and those are in hard-to-reach spaces. Now, let me give you the third example, which is Kakuzi, because they have what we call the operational grievance mechanism. Because conflict is quite useful, if you look at the research around how men and women behave in competitive environment, you find that the women will be, much more risk aware and risk averse, and men are going to take the risk. So grievance and insolvency spaces are very interesting spaces for us to learn how to move the gender agenda from one step to another step, in a much efficient manner within a very short time and in the least invasive manner, because everybody is covering their own territory, right? So if you invade in my space, then there would be that kind of reactions. So the grievance mechanism, which is designed by Kakuzi and NGEC with support from UK, is one of the mechanisms that I would say that is quite useful, and I think the health sector would pick such a space on how do we address and how do we respond, how do we give the health workers in any space, you know, the feedback loop. You're able to complain, somebody's going to hear your complaints, but it's going through a very structured mechanisms. And even internal mechanism is not comprehensive enough. You have an opportunity to go to an independent, you know, human rights body that is established by your own organization. That's another good example I would like to give. But of course, we have the National Gender and Equality Commission, and we have many things that we do that, of course, you have alluded that in your presentation. We have model policies that we're able to share with you. It is not instructive. You have the responsibility of the health sector to go and customize it to your own needs. We also offer other very basic issues. For instance, in our reception, you're going to find the clutches, you're going to find a wheelchair. There's an assumption here that none of us needs it, you know. So we provide those kind of small, you know, interventions. If it is persons with disabilities or what we call visually impaired persons, we try to comply with the Marrakech Treaty to ensure that the information is accessible. One of the things that you're going to find in the health sector is that there would be some opportunities for promotion. There would be gender quotas as well. They are well listed, but in somebody's laptop with a password, alphanumeric. So nobody knows and predicts when are these advertisements going to come. What qualifications do you need? And much more importantly, remember, we all come from this space. We know we set these questions beforehand, isn't it? So that when we're interviewing people for a particular position, there's a way you can add those, there's a way you can phrase those questions just to throw them off. And one of the things that is coming now into the human resource management is how the panels, composition of the panels, and how you set those questions must be gender sensitive, gender specific, and ultimately gender responsive.
Thank you so much, Paul. And when it comes to questions, I do remember a network of a number of men. One day we sat and they were actually deliberating and wanting to understand why is it that when they go for gender positions, they are asked, why did you apply this position and you are a man? So again, those are some of the things that we need to look into to ensure that the cultures and the organizational inclusivity takes into consideration. And again, it applies also to some roles where women would apply and they would be asked, why did you apply for this role? And it's a man's role. Again, let's put our hands together for the team. I think they have given us proper deliberations, and I'll be able to take 3 questions from the floor, and then we'll be able to start wrapping up. And I know Dr. Sam Oula, I did not appreciate you. Again, let's put a hand clap for him so that he feels he has been considered. Thank you. Questions from the floor? I'm taking the first 3. To see the hands or comments? Yeah, questions or comments? Go ahead.
Sure. Thank you for that good presentation. So my question goes to how much, for the fear of not being seen as an ally, I'm an ally to this process. However, how much space are we looking at? We're already talking of 70% women in the workforce, and we have 27. Do we want to achieve the constitutional thresholds of 30% women in leadership? And then after that, if we go over and above again and then have more women in leadership, then will we start reworking or re-engineering our processes again to reinvent the wheel in terms of now having more men again in leadership? Just a similar case as what has happened to the boy child, as we paid a lot of
So do you think the gender agenda is moving so much towards the left and it needs to be at the center? And what do we need to give for that balance to be able to be structured in a way that men don't lose their identity that's traditionally been there, and women also are able to come to the table where they need also to make those kind of decisions. So, yeah.
Personal experience.
It's a very easy conversation because it is not that women want to take over. It's about women getting equal representation at the decision-making table. And it's been sometimes issues such as having a whole, I think we had one menstrual task force that was all men. And it's not that men don't understand. I mean, technically, we've all, if you're in medical school or whatever form, you'll understand menstruation and the physiology of it all. Part, or to have, sex so that you can have parts. Now, some of these things will come in terms of how you're going to design a project, how you're going to budget for it, how you're going to implement it. And so there's all the value of having women at the table. So if you have a task force of 10 people and there are no women, that's a question. If you have a task force of 10 people, 5 are men, 5 are women. 5 or maybe 2 are from, a certain age group, maybe Gen Z, and another group is those who are in menopause. Like, we're looking at this diversity that we really need to have in these decision-making spaces, over and above just having men and women. Even the generational representation is just as important. I believe that as we look at these ratios that we need to have at these spaces, it really should reflect the population. If 50% of the population of Kenya, or more than 50, are women, why should we not hit that 50-50 mark? Why should we be at 30-70? And perhaps the 30-70 was because we didn't have as many women produced through the pipeline into leadership, and so 30 maybe was reasonable. But right now, we do have women, and they're technically sound. And they should have that opportunity to sit at the table. Now, as we look at women's leadership, it's really not about a favor. It's both of them, men and women, should come in technically sound. But if we are to achieve this number, and so that we are having, let's say, a senior leadership team that's all 10 men, for instance, one resigns for whatever reason, and you want to hire and you're looking for diversity mix, is it even a question that really you should be looking for women to be in that space? But they must be technically sound. For me, of course, if you're trying to promote a woman who is not technically sound does not qualify for the job, then it beats the purpose. And I think that's when we start getting that issue around the glass cliff, ceilings, all those things. They start coming up in that way if we are not promoting based on a fair space. And that's what we are advocating for in the workplace. Fair space, fair opportunity, fair pay, equal. Because just as in medical school, I went to medical school, I graduated, and I applied for that job, and a male counterpart goes through the same course, applies for the job, it should be fair, because we're both technically sound. But if there's a whole quota that in that particular organization that we're applying to, in the senior leadership there's no woman, or there's a misrepresentation of whether male or female, then we should be fitting that gap so that we have diversity represented at the table. Diversity wins. Diversity leads to quality decisions. Diversity makes the community win. Diversity will change that health agenda moving forward. We will hit those outcomes. Right now, we are a whole 132 years from achieving gender equity. So I will not see it in my lifetime. Probably you won't see it in your lifetime unless we start making these changes. For instance, in Rwanda, yes, they have that quota system, but the women's voices are not being heard even in the spaces where they're sitting. So there is more. The quota system is not, it was nice, we achieved it, just the same way we're looking at women's representation in politics by having a women nominated. But that gives that opportunity for them to see themselves as MPs, to see themselves as governors, because you only become what you can see. And so creating these opportunities really must exist. We must be very committed. But it is not going to be a favor that's being done. It must be that we are all coming in technically sound and being given fair opportunity to look for that position or presence in a board or presence in decision making. We will pull a chair and sit. We need to be involved.
The second question was about the conversation shifting to the left and what equilibrium we need to get to, if I'm not wrong. First, let me start with a bit of history. I grew up in a culture that was very patriarchal, where my mother was treated in the same manner as me as a child. And when food was served, only my father sat at the table. My mother and I would sit on the floor to eat. But that was then. Have we made strides? I think so. Things have changed. How much are we on the left side of the equilibrium? And I don't know what left. It's left towards women more or towards men more. I don't know. The person who asked the question did not specify. There's still a bit of this imbalance. And so this is a conversation we need to have. I know that in the last decade, from my observations, there's been a lot of focus on the girl child, a lot of empowerment, a lot of affirmative action. And there's a bit of risk to that, if we're to be honest, in the sense that boys get ignored. And so we are raising a generation where boys will not even feel like men if we are not careful. So this is a call for us, both men and women, to mentor both. Give the boys their space, mentor them as boys to become men, but also let's support our girls to become women leaders in society. In the culture I grew up in, women were not allowed to inherit property. They would not be given land. They did not belong. In fact, girls grew up knowing that even if they were not the to be married type, because not everybody gets married, yeah? They did not belong. They were sent away. But things are changing because of the conversations we've had. So I think we need to put a lot of focus on this conversation, create awareness, support. Let's not ignore one as we try to prop the other. Maintain equilibrium. And I shared earlier, in my experience, I've tried to balance both. Whenever there's space, we look at, of course, competence and technical expertise, first and foremost. but we skew hirings towards the gender that we want in order to bring some bit of balance in the boardroom. Thank you.
Thank you, Dr. Sam. And Paul, kindly wrap up in 1 minute so that we can start wrapping up this session.
Thank you so much. I think I would go with both submissions because of time, and just encourage everyone that the substratum for gender equality is measured at the results level, at the outcome level. So there are very small steps and processes, like gender mainstreaming is a process in that. And so the example that you have given varies by the circumstance. For example, I've interacted with conservancy space. Think of Saburu, where getting a female teacher in the entire county is so difficult. And so that encouragement is worth it, because you also have girls who are in school and they will require the role model, and the men themselves are asking that we need to have such kind of teachers coming in. We also have other spaces. I think one of the ministry we give an advisory on fish diving, the deep diving down the coast for the military, and the advertisement was very clear that these spaces are only for men. And the National Gender Equality Commission issued an advisory and said, no, we also think there could be women who may be interested in this. Of course, having conversation with them, like in Kisumu, only one woman has a boat. So these are realities on the ground, but that does not mean we can't encourage women to be deep divers. And lastly, allow me to give you my own example. I am here as affirmative action. The advertisement for this position that I hold was floated 3 times, and they insisted they wanted a man. And every time no man applied. And it were all women. But the institution needs to have a gender balance. And so that's how I came in. Thanks.
Thank you so much, Paul, and thank you, panelists, for that great deliberation. And in terms of wrap-up, as I bring in Latif so that he can take over from here, I would like to say that when it comes to gender equality, it's about the opportunities. And apart from that, it's good for us also to get into cognizance that our most ways of programming would use a gender approach. When I talk about a gender approach, I'm talking about programs that would be designed to look at the needs, the priorities, and the issues that affect men, women, boys, and girls. I do know that there are some programs that we can use the feminist approach. For instance, if we were to start a program for domestic workers, there are quite female employees are quite a majority compared to men. And I think that's a good example of where we would use a feminist approach. Again, there are also other examples where we are going to use a masculine approach. But a majority of our programs would use a gender approach. So thank you so much, and allow me to thank Dr. Sam Oula, Dr. Nora Obudho, and Mr. Paul Kuria. Thank you so much. It was quite an insightful conversation, and let's keep the fire burning.
Wow, exactly on time. Ladies and gentlemen, please give a round of applause to the panelists. I'm gonna call up, let me get a representation. Can I get one person from EABL, one person from Family Bank? And Ben Agina, please come up to help me give out these gifts really quickly. We have good representation from the teams. Ah, perfect. Okay, I'm happy this is good. Any people are stepping onto the arena. So can I have the gifts really quickly for our dear panelists? I'm so grateful that we could have the opportunity to award. Dennis and Dr. Gilbert Mutinda from Family Bank. Dennis from EABL as well. And then, of course, Ben Agina from APHRC. Ben, please take the floor to award Dr. Nora Obudho. Dennis, still stay on stage, okay. Okay, thank you. Dennis, you can give to Dr. Sam Oula. Thank you very much. Dennis, thank you from ABL as well. Much appreciated. Dr. Samola Santisala. And Gilbert, please, Mr. Paul Courier. Thank you. Thank you very much. Asante sana. Kahoot team, I hope you're ready. We are just jumping into Quizmasters. We're ready. And then last but not least, I'd want to have Benson give to our able moderator, Dr. Benson Mutuku. Asante sana. Thank you very much, ladies and gentlemen. Much appreciated. One group photo. One group photo, please. One group photo. So I'm following instructions. This conference is not possible without the very able team behind the scenes. So I am so honored they could all get us really nice gifts and put us all here. Asante sana. One final round of applause as they all take their seats. We're live. Yes, in case you're still with us. Guess who just arrived? Dr. George Njenga, founding dean at Stratford Business School, apart from many other hats. You didn't miss a lot. I know you're not looking at me, but I'm still giving you the mic. I'll wait until you finish your deliberations. What are you looking forward to in the afternoon?
To enjoy the wisdom that comes from this floor and see how we can improve our families, our society, and make it more entrepreneurial. Yes, that's what I want.
Can't wait, sir. And guess who joined us as well? We have health and fitness instructor, Mr. Shivrenja Simani. I was even just trying to get that word correctly, but I'm happy I married a Luya, so it can only be a Luya name that I can break down. So Shiv, simply put, just tell the audience what they should look forward in the afternoon.
Hi, good afternoon, everyone. So from our panel, you just have to look forward to basically tips and tricks of getting fit physically, which is an anchor of one of your anchor foundational characteristics just for life and how it affects your mental health. Yeah, thank you.
So yeah, and I'm happy, even though our chief guest today spoke about mental health and really will be expanding further on that. We have two panels, ladies and gentlemen. The first panel will look at men's positive health, man's physical, mental health, spiritual and social health. And also we have men's and as allies, fathers, brothers, role models, coaches and mentors. Now that will be starting at exactly 2:30. Now this room will be split into two. I know there's a tendency to have maybe an 80-20, 60-40, but please, we're going to allocate you the rooms, and this is how we're going to do it. Ladies and gentlemen, open.
Yes, thank you very much. And again, I love the panel. The panel was very awesome. I just want to say one key thing, if in case you missed what Dr. Nora said, diversity is the key for unlocking what we are dreaming of. I think it didn't sink in, I will say it again. Diversity is actually the name of the game. If you look at where we've gotten to until now, it's because of allowing others into the room. Whatever others look like, that's not like you. So I think once you embrace diversity, we will unlock the Kenya that we dream and desire. And that's my goal. And so like right now, I'd like all of us to get into pairs now. And please, it's very important. So in your table, if you feel you're an odd number, please be an even number. And then I want you to decide on that in your pair. We're going to have two roles, two designations in honor of men. These are, in psychology and storytelling, these archetypes allow men to become mature men. We can talk about that another time. But I want you to decide in that team who is a king and who is a warrior. So please do that now. Decide with the pair who, and please, if you're not paired up, I see you, you're solo there. Connect with someone. Choose who is the king and who is the warrior. And even as you do that, I can give you a tip. You see, we know about kings. These are the ones that rule the land.
Sorry, Opera, just let me give a caveat.
Sure.
This game excludes the following: Father Charles Mundia, Shiv Simani, Lawrence Githinji, Rain Mwendwa, and Shadrach Mwangangi. You're excluded from that game. Next,
Thank
this
you.
game excludes Dr. John Jenga, Captain Paul Mwangi, and Captain Emma Mwangi. Are they here, by the way? This is a father and daughter duo. Is Captain, are you here? Okay. Dr. Simon Kikundu and Mr. Robert Yahweh. You're excluded from this game. The rest, you have to participate.
Yes, Father, you've been excluded. So please, now that you've had the amended participation rules, please, you need to have 2 rules because this will determine which sessions we go to afterwards. So it is very critical. Let's do that right now. Okay. With the silence I'm hearing, it's like all of you have decided, right? Who is the king and who is the warrior? So I'd like us to do this right now in the most orderly way possible. I'd like all the kings to be on this side of the room. We can use the camera as the halfway point. So the kings will be on this side and the warriors will be on the other side. And I'd like us to do this now so that we're going to go to lunch immediately after this. And after lunch, you know where you're coming back to sit. So let's stand up right now in 3, 2, 1. Yes, kings come this way, warriors to the back of the room.
All the warriors at the
Yeah.
back of the camera. Let's all come this side.
That's right, all the warriors.
All the
follow
warriors.
MC Brown.
Yes. The brown man is here. I hope you can all see me. All the warriors come
That-
this side.
That's right, and all the kings on this side.
All the kings are on the other side. And if you are a warrior and you're on this side, can you just remain here, seated? All the warriors, let's have a seat on this side. No, you are a warrior, right? You don't have to move. All the warriors, if you're on this side, don't move. You're just allowed to sit where you are. And all the kings, let's move to the other end.
Pardon? Yes, kings are seated on this side of the camera where I am at.
Yes.
So the camera is a halfway line. All the kings are this way.
We
all the
seem to
warriors.
have less space, so we can use this.
Okay.
All the kings from here going the other side, all the kings to sit from the other end, all the warriors from this end to the other end, all the warriors, let's settle this side.
Kings,
You
and
are
find
a
your
warrior.
seats. Please.
Yes, you have a
EABL, I
seat
know
this
you want
side,
to be
eh?
together, but please. There'll be EABL kings and EABL warriors.
Kings, you can have your seat. Just grab a seat.
Okay.
All the kings.
All
I can
kings.
see you standing. Grab a seat. Yes.
All right. So I think we have an agreement. When we come back from lunch, ladies and gentlemen, when we come back from lunch, we'll be able to show you where the kings and warriors are going. So you'll follow our cue. Please enjoy your break. We have lunch served at the terrace. Please note the terrace. Take the lifts to the first floor. You have your vouchers. Should you not have your vouchers, just by the reception desk, kindly get a lunch voucher. Lunch is served at the terrace. And we're right at the back there as well. Joe will give it to you. The terrace, ladies and gentlemen, we are back at exactly 2:30. Please, the next session starts at 2:30. To our online audience, we'll be on time. See you at 2:30.
So that means be here by 2:25. When it is 2:25, please stand up from your delicious meal. Hopefully, you'll be finishing your dessert so that you can make your way here and be here by 2:30 so we can start. Thank you very much, and go enjoy your lunch. Kings and warriors, au!